156,000 Allied troops stormed Normandy on D-Day with crushing air superiority and numerical advantage. Yet 77 days of savage fighting lay ahead before victory, with every hedgerow becoming a fortress, and 60,000 Allied casualties proving that material superiority alone could not guarantee rapid triumph. The story we think we know about Normandy ends on June 6, 1944. We remember the beaches, the paratroopers, the heroism of a single day. But D-Day was just the opening act of a brutal 77-day campaign that would unfold in 3 distinct phases. The real question is not how the Allies won on D-Day, but how they survived the nightmare that followed. This is the story of overwhelming air power and numerical superiority crashing against determined German resistance in a landscape designed for slaughter. The largest amphibious invasion in history brought overwhelming force against a fortified coastline, but the real battle was just beginning. On June 6, 1944, nearly 7,000 ships carried 156,000 men toward 5 beaches along a 50-mile stretch of Norman coast. The numbers told a story of crushing advantage: 73,000 Americans and 83,000 British and Canadian troops against roughly 50,000 German defenders. Above them, over 14,000 Allied aircraft sorties on D-Day alone established immediate and total air dominance. The Luftwaffe, once masters of the European sky, could field fewer than 300 operational aircraft in the entire region by mid-June. The ratio was not just favorable, it was catastrophic for Germany. But numbers meant nothing on Omaha Beach. Survivors described a wall of fire, bodies everywhere, the ocean turning red. German machine guns and artillery pieces positioned in concrete bunkers along the bluffs cut down landing troops before they could reach the seawall. Engineers trying to clear obstacles died in the open. Medics crawled through the killing zone to reach wounded men who would not survive. At Pointe du Hoc, Rangers scaled cliffs under direct fire to silence German guns. Over 60% became casualties. The Atlantic Wall fortifications, bunkers, minefields, gun emplacements proved that concrete and steel could extract terrible costs even from overwhelming force. Eisenhower and Montgomery had coordinated this massive multinational assault with a clear vision. First, establish secure beachheads. Second, rapidly build up forces and supplies through captured ports like Cherbourg. Third, break out across France toward Paris and into Germany itself. The plan assumed the beachhead would be the hardest part. It assumed wrong. Rommel's defensive strategy had placed German forces forward, close to the coast, ready for rapid counterattack. His plan nearly worked, despite the successful landings on Utah, Gold, Juno, and Sword beaches, despite the link-up with airborne troops who had dropped behind enemy lines to disrupt German response. Allied progress stalled within days. The terrain ahead revealed its true nature. The bocage country of Normandy was not open ground suitable for tanks and rapid advance. It was an ancient agricultural landscape of small fields surrounded by earthen banks topped with thick hedgerows. Each field became a separate fortress. Each advance required a separate battle. By mid-June, the Allies had landed over 1 million men, 200,000 vehicles, and 600,000 tons of supplies. The numbers kept growing, but the ground gained could be measured in yards, not miles. Material superiority meant nothing when you could not see the enemy 20 yards ahead. Air superiority meant nothing when your own tanks could not move. But as Allied forces pushed inland from their hard-won beaches, they entered a landscape that would turn their material superiority into a grinding nightmare, where every field became a killing zone and weeks of progress could be measured in yards. The nightmare landscape of Normandy's bocage country awaited. Ancient hedgerows that would devour Allied advantages and turn every advance into a blood-soaked crawl. The bocage turned warfare inside out. In open country, Allied tanks and numerical superiority would have crushed German resistance. But there was no open country. Historian S.L.A. Marshall captured the reality in 5 words. Every hedgerow was a fortress. The earthen banks stood 6 to 10 feet high, topped with centuries-old root systems that formed impenetrable walls. Visibility dropped to a few yards, tanks could not maneuver. Infantry had to clear each field by hand, advancing into unknown fire zones where German defenders waited in ambush. Between D-Day and late July, Allied forces suffered approximately 60,000 casualties in this grinding hedgerow warfare. The Germans lost between 80,000 and 100,000, but they made the Allies pay for every field, every town, every road junction. Professional German defenders used terrain mastery to exact terrible costs. They positioned anti-tank guns to cover narrow lanes. They set up machine gun nests with overlapping fields of fire. They counterattacked at night when Allied air superiority meant nothing. The 12th SS Panzer Division and Panzer Lehr Division conducted aggressive, competent resistance that contradicted every assumption about rapid Allied advance. Allied air superiority reached 15 to 1 or greater by July. Allied tactical air forces averaged 1,000 to 2,000 sorties per day, attacking German positions, destroying supply columns, bombing bridges and rail lines. German soldiers described constant bombing and strafing. Movement during daylight became suicidal. Reinforcements could not reach the front. Supplies ran low, the psychological pressure was overwhelming, but the hedgerows still protected them. Fighter bombers could not see targets hidden beneath the canopy. Strategic bombing could not dislodge defenders from earthen fortifications. Air power alone could not win this battle. The fight for key towns revealed the brutal arithmetic. Caen, a D-Day objective, did not fall until late July. Saint-Lô required weeks of attritional combat. Private accounts from Allied soldiers described the terror of moving through narrow lanes, unable to see more than a few yards ahead, subject to sudden ambushes and sniper fire. Medics worked under fire, engineers died clearing paths, infantry squads advanced 100 yards and counted themselves lucky. By early July, U.S. engineers developed a tactical innovation born from desperation. They salvaged steel prongs from beach obstacles and welded them to the front of Sherman tanks, creating rhino tanks that could cut through hedgerows instead of climbing over them. This simple adaptation took weeks to develop and implement. It required trial and error, battlefield modification, and the willingness to admit that the bocage had defeated conventional tactics. Combined arms tactics evolved slowly. Infantry, armor, and engineers working together to clear fields, supported by artillery and close air support. But the adaptation came at a terrible cost in time and lives. The common misconception that D-Day meant victory collapsed against the reality of near stalemate. Allied commanders faced a crisis. Material superiority was not enough. Air superiority was not enough. Numerical advantage was not enough. The Germans could not win, but they could prevent the Allies from winning quickly. Every week of delay gave Germany time to shift forces, to prepare defenses deeper in France, to hope for a political settlement. Something had to break the deadlock. After weeks of stalemate and mounting casualties, Allied commanders prepared a solution as devastating as it was desperate. A hammer blow of concentrated air power that would either shatter German lines or prove that even overwhelming force could not break the bocage deadlock. The answer came from above, a storm of bombs so concentrated it would either break the German lines or prove them unbreakable. On July 25, 1944, Operation Cobra began with carpet bombing on a scale never before attempted in support of ground forces. Allied heavy and medium bombers dropped 3,300 tons of bombs in a corridor just 2,400 yards wide near Saint-Lô. The bombardment was supposed to be surgical, precise, devastating. It was all three, but not in the way planners intended. The massive bombing killed hundreds of American troops when bombs fell short, including Lieutenant General Leslie McNair, the highest-ranking American officer killed in the European theater. The friendly fire casualties revealed the terrible risks of concentrated firepower even as it achieved its strategic objective. The bombing did not simply destroy German positions, it shattered the entire defensive structure. Communication lines went dead, command posts vanished. Survivors emerged from their bunkers dazed, bleeding from the ears, unable to coordinate resistance. The U.S. 7 and 19th Corps, led by the 9th and 30th Infantry Divisions, advanced through the bombed corridor. German lines that had held for weeks collapsed in days. The campaign transformed from static attrition to mobile pursuit. The breakthrough demonstrated that overwhelming force concentration, combined with tactical adaptation, could finally overcome German defensive resistance. But the victory was not just about the bombing. Weeks of attritional fighting had worn down German units. Allied air interdiction had destroyed bridges, trains, and road columns, preventing effective reinforcement. The transportation plan, executed throughout June and July, had isolated Normandy from the rest of France. German forces could not retreat effectively. They could not receive supplies, they could not maneuver. When the breakthrough came, they had nothing left to stop it. Allied forces exploited the breach with speed and aggression. Armored columns raced south and west. German units found themselves surrounded, cut off, destroyed. By mid-August, approximately 50,000 German troops were encircled in the Falaise pocket. Only 20,000 escaped. Allied air power made the encirclement catastrophic. Constant strafing destroyed German columns trying to retreat. Fighter bombers hunted individual vehicles. The Falaise pocket became a killing ground where German forces paid the final price for 77 days of resistance. The three-phase narrative from amphibious assault through bocage attrition to devastating breakout proved that victory required not just material superiority, but tactical adaptation, overwhelming force concentration, and the patience to fight through determined defensive resistance. Paris was liberated on August 25, 1944. The campaign shifted from slow attrition to rapid mobile warfare, but the victory was measured in more than territory gained. It was measured in 60,000 Allied casualties and between 80,000 and 100,000 German casualties. It was measured in weeks of brutal fighting that shattered the myth of easy victory. The myth that Normandy was won on D-Day had been shattered by 77 days of reality. Only through 3 brutal phases, overwhelming air power, and the willingness to adapt and endure could Allied superiority finally overcome German defensive mastery in the hedgerows of France. The 77-day battle for Normandy tells not the story of a single day's triumph, but of 3 distinct brutal phases. The iconic amphibious assault established a foothold, but not victory. The grinding bocage nightmare proved that material advantage alone could not guarantee rapid success against determined defenders using terrain mastery. The devastating breakout of Operation Cobra demonstrated that concentrated overwhelming force combined with tactical adaptation could finally break the stalemate. Allied air power flying 1,000 to 2,000 daily sorties and numerical superiority eventually shattered German defensive resistance that turned every hedgerow into a fortress. But the victory required tactical adaptation, concentrated force, and the willingness to fight through weeks of savage attrition. The lesson of Normandy is not that overwhelming force guarantees victory. The lesson is that victory demands adaptation, patience, and the terrible willingness to pay the price in blood until the enemy can resist no longer. The longest day was just the beginning. The real battle lasted 77 days and cost over 200,000 casualties on both sides before the liberation of France could truly begin.